Hi everybody, we are Mike and Brenda Baker, and today we are going to talk about when your spouse won't back you up with the stepkids, what to do next. So in this video, we are going to teach you exactly what we believe you should do if your spouse is not helping you when it comes to the stepkids, how they're treating you. Maybe it's different things that, back talking or chores or whatever it is. So that's what we're going to teach you.
So, starting with point number one, you're going to hear us say this again and again and again. Why do we repeat ourselves? Because some people just don't get it right away. You never know when you're going to say it a certain way and somebody's going to go click. Oh. So be straightforward. There's both men and women do this.
Yes.
They keep expecting the other one to see the problem, or they half-heartedly say something about the problem. Well, don't you think that maybe they should have done this? Or, okay, like I said, that is not communication. Communication is, honey, I said this to such and such, and they were completely belligerent with me, used language that is not okay. Can we talk about what we need to do about that? Okay, straightforward. You can't get to whether your spouse is going to be a problem or a solution in this until you get to the fact that they look at you and acknowledge, I hear what you're saying. Straightforward. And that goes for men or women. Because although women will talk more roundabout, because, if you've ever watched Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, which we highly endorse, by the way.
Yes, we love it.
Mark Gungor talks about how everything connects with everything in the female brain. And whereas guys, we have boxes that we keep thoughts in. Boxes. And the boxes never touch. Okay, never touch. So the whole point here is straightforward still works on both. Now, straightforward is going to work better with men, but women still have the capacities for straightforward. So you got to just keep it super simple. Here's the issue. Here's what I need from you. Can we talk about it? Not, can you go fix it? Can we talk about it?
However, I'm not disagreeing with you.
No.
But if you're the bio parent, please listen. Your children are not allowed to treat your spouse with disrespect, with hate, or any other negative behavior. I don't care who they are or who you are. That will ruin your family 100% of the time. So stop it. Thank you.
See, here's the thing to keep in mind. You're either a family or you're not.
Yeah.
Okay? Just because you're a blended family doesn't mean family rules. Not only do the family rules for a non-blended family apply to you, but family rules for a blended family apply to you, which puts you under twice the scrutiny. Which means that now, because you had a failed relationship, failed marriage, it doesn't matter. Not only do you have to forgive yourself, you have to move forward, but now you've got to introduce a spouse that deserves as much respect as the first. Now you've got a whole new dynamic that you've got to introduce, but you got to be straightforward to do it. But that brings us into point two.
Can we?
No, go ahead. If you got something else to say.
Go back just for a second?
Yeah.
I really want to clarify. We're not trying to say that the bio parent that doesn't live in the household, your ex, doesn't have a good place and isn't, really the most important mom or dad, whatever that case may be. Okay. We're not saying that the step parent is coming in and replacing. We don't believe that at all. I mean, that's never what I wanted to do, but that's how it kind of worked out because his ex didn't choose to be much of a parent. She only did the fun things. And so I got riddled with all the discipline and everything. And so that was a really hard situation. So if you're living with a step parent, you've got to give them some grace. They are trying their best and oftentimes are taking more responsibility than the bio parent that doesn't live in the house. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, a lot of the times they're the step parent, but they're taking on this parent role, which they chose to do, but they don't have as much pull with the kids. So that's why you have to step in. And so if you're the spouse that isn't backing your spouse with the stepkids, you have got to quit it because it will ruin your relationship if it hasn't already. And the reason that we're doing this video is we have had so many comments in other videos of people asking this very question. What do I do? How do I do this? My stepkids are being absolute terrible to me. They're swearing or whatever the case may be. Bio parents, you've got to step up. Your spouse is the most important person in your life. I don't care what anyone says about the kids. I'm not saying the kids don't matter. I'm just saying your spouse is up on a pedestal and you need to treat them as such and expect your children to do the same thing, no matter what their age.
Here, let me throw out an unpopular opinion. This will really tick a lot of you off. I would never say that as the bio parent, you need to force your kids into this relationship with your step. But
with your step?
With the step parent. Okay? That is something that you have to gradually do. But it is something you should expect. I'm not saying force them, but you show we are family. So let me say this. When you call them, when the whole office of mom and dad, their names, okay? They're just titles. It doesn't change who the real dad is. It doesn't change who the real mom is. But in your house, you have a new dynamic. Now, if you are the husband and you have an ex-wife, okay? Your ex-wife does not occupy the highest position anymore. Now, does that mean you should teach your kids to disrespect her? Absolutely not. She is still their mother. She absolutely deserves their respect, and she deserves their respect as their mom. And you should be the one to teach them what that respect looks like. But it doesn't change the fact that the woman who is now in your home as your wife is higher than her, higher than your ex. And that goes with everybody, because you are the one who set the rules. Both you, your wife, or the wife and the husband are the ones who set the rules for this family. We don't disrespect the exes, and we most certainly don't disrespect each other in this house.
One of the things that I have always appreciated the most about Mike, and this is one of the things, is that no matter what, if the boys that we shared ever disrespected their biological mom, and she told us about it in the few tiny little things when we actually got along, Mike would not, he'd be like, you listen here, mister. And he did not put up with it with the kids disrespecting their bio mom either. So come on, you can still show honor in that no matter what happened with your divorce. You can still show your kids that you expect them to treat their actual mom with as much respect as you expect them to treat their stepmom. Or if it's a husband, dad, mom, or bio dad, bio stepdad. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm getting it all messed up. But Mike did that excellent. He always made sure that the boys knew that he expected. And there were a couple times we went to her house because she wouldn't discipline them, but she sure let him come over and let them have it as far as words and that sort of thing. That was weird, but I digressed.
So I think you get the point there, all right? Your marriage is first and foremost above everything. Your current marriage, okay? Period. The other to be respected. We don't teach disrespect. But that brings us to the second one. Now, let me say something before we get to the second one.
Yeah.
You knew this was a God-fearing show, video, podcast, whatever you're listening to right now. You knew that we were God-fearing and everything we do is Bible-based. So that brings us to number 2, which is probably could have been number 1, but we needed some foundation to lay a number 2. Have you prayed about it? And when I say, have you prayed about it, I don't mean, have you prayed that the Lord would give your spouse insight? I don't mean, have you prayed that God would take away the ex? I'm not talking about selfish, self-centered prayer, okay? I'm not talking about aggravated prayer. I'm not talking about angry prayer. I'm not talking about vindictive prayer, which I think any God-fearing person is probably partaken in without realizing it even. I'm talking about prayer for opportunity, prayer for love and cherishment, and prayer.
Cherishment.
I like cherishment. Don't make fun of it. And prayer for a solid relationship, if at all possible, with the X, I would like to say before Brenda says what she wants to, I've come across a number of couples now where the step and the X actually get along really well. Okay. And don't for 2 seconds think that we don't support that. We absolutely support that. But there are so many more that don't. And that's where we come in. We want you to attain to that next level if it's possible.
Yeah.
But step number 2 is absolutely essential to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, yes, in our lives, that's what we do first. We do work hard on remembering that prayer is really our first, our first ability to deal with a situation, whether it be with each other, one of our children, whatever. And sometimes it's hard to pray and believe that God is going to, do work. And sometimes the work that needs to be done is on ourselves, right? And sometimes that's really hard to even think about. So I don't know. But is that all you had there?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to say a whole lot about prayer. Now, let me say one thing. Now, not everybody watching this is going to be God-fearing. Okay? There are lots of atheists, quite honestly, who don't have terrible marriages. But the point here is foundation. Okay? Now, does that mean that two people who aren't God-fearing can never get along because they don't have prayer? No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that they've got a different foundation they're going to have to build on, and it could very well be that much harder. And they're maybe going to have to make some compromises they don't want to make. And because, when people have consistently shown that they're not very good at managing their own affairs. Okay, so that's why we say prayer. Prayer is foundational. But that brings us to our third one, the if this, then that principle.
Yeah, and so with this, I mean, we never want to encourage people to get divorced because you've already had that situation. And honestly, we never ever want to encourage anyone to be divorced unless there's a situation where there's abuse. That's different. But for every other issue, mostly, we always want to be sure that we're, encouraging people to stay together and work it out and figure it out. But that being said, sometimes if a spouse will not listen, you do have to put firm boundaries down. And so we're just going to call it the if this, then that principle. And basically it's not an ultimatum, but it's just, if this happens, then this happens. So kind of take that away.
So the if this, then that. There are times when your spouse is going to be ridiculous about something or is not going to be forthcoming as maybe they need to be. Meaning that you're not going to see eye to eye. So, when the spouse doesn't back you, you are going to have to get to a point where it's like, look, this needs to change. Now, let me back up a second. There were, there were probably signs before you got married that this was going to be a problem. That maybe you just put off and thought, well, we'll get this straightened out when we get married. Or, well, they just don't know me that well. No, those are excuses, okay? What we're saying here is boundaries are important. Boundaries are healthy. Now, what do I mean by a boundary? A boundary is, it is not okay for anybody to talk to me like that, even your kids. Because now they're not your kids, they're our kids.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in I am a huge disbeliever in the it takes a village principle, where where you will be told that it takes a village to raise a child. I don't buy that baloney for 2 seconds. Okay? But in a sense, a very broad sense, now we have more than just the bio mom and the bio dad raising a kid. Now we have the bio mom, the bio dad, the stepdad, the stepmom, and all of the step grandparents that come into that too. So you have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Because what you'll feel like is that you have to have less boundaries because there's so much more in play. No, you need to have a healthy boundary. And what I mean by healthy is one that protects you but isn't selfish. And only you know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
So you have to stop and think about what is going to be best for the family, but what is also going to be best for my relationship with my spouse. Because let me remind you that all other relationships in the house are subject to the husband and wife. You are husband and wife before you're mom and dad, or before you hold the office of mom and dad. And what wouldn't be okay, if you're a husband, if you wouldn't take that kind of talk off an adult guy in a restaurant, why are you allowing your kids to do it? And if you're the mom, if you wouldn't take that kind of talk from somebody else in public towards your husband, why are you letting the kids do it?
Or your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just really important to make sure that you have some boundaries, and I don't know. I don't want to say, because people have a tendency to watch our channel and then do exactly what they're told. We don't really know what's going to be the best thing in this situation. You really have to work with your spouse and try to figure out how you guys can work together to make this whole thing work. But sometimes that does mean that you have to put your foot down. From time to time, I have put my foot down about a few things. And it wasn't because Mike was necessarily doing them wrong. It was really affecting me in a really negative way. And so we had to kind of figure out what that was going to look like. And so, work with your spouse, work hard at, finding the ways to work around the situation. If you came into this marriage and you came in with teenagers, there are a lot of things that will not work with teenagers. And we're not going to speak of those here because that is not the area that we have dealt with ourselves. We've helped other people through it, but you absolutely have to be on the same page and fast, or those teenagers are going to eat you alive like a bunch of little sharks. Because that's really what they're being taught in school, is that their parents are stupid and they don't know anything. And so honestly, maybe the kids need to be homeschooled. I don't know. I don't know your situation or your finances. But I'm just saying, sometimes it takes, big decisions in order to make your blended family work. And so that's really what we're saying here, is make the big decisions, make them together, and figure out how to make this thing work. You guys got married for a reason, but sometimes, when things are hard, it's harder to remember why. And so we always suggest that people write down a list of reasons that you married your spouse.
Put the marriage first. That's also an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
You would be hard pressed. If you're God-fearing, there is nowhere in Scripture that you can pull out that says, put the kids before your spouse. Yeah. Scripture is adamant. Spouse first. Now, I'm not saying, a lot of people, when they hear that, what they hear is neglect kids. Neglect kids. Put kids. I didn't say that. No. What I'm saying is, if you love your kids, step or not, if you love the opportunity to teach them what a good relationship looks like, you put the marriage first, and those other things will naturally fall in like Legos. Right.
Now, think of it this way, and this is kind of an example that I was just now thinking of. When a new CEO comes into a company, and maybe you understand business, maybe you don't, but I'm going to try to make it simple enough that it applies here. When a new CEO comes in, the upper management really has to show the others at the work environment that they approve, right? That's the same thing here. If you're not approving of your new CEO, what are you doing? You're basically encouraging the underlings to rise up against the CEO, right? So you wouldn't do that in business. Why are you doing it in your family? Really, a lot of the sports principles and business principles are the same in a blended family, except for you have to follow them to the nth degree and be as consistent as you possibly can in order to get this thing to work. That is the one thing that Mike and I both really were good at. We would make a decision and then we would go together. Even on some of the decisions that maybe we should have thought about a little different, but we were young, so we didn't really know. But we just, we tried so hard to be so consistent and do all the things. And so I'm sure that's your heart too. And just relax, let things settle with the kids, but build your relationship with your spouse so that you guys can have that teamwork and you're able to really, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that we did in order to get our family together. Now, remember, we did start out with very young children, 4, 3, and 2 when we got married. So that matters. So do be understanding that if your kids are older or they're teens, it's going to be a longer process. But you do have to both be on the same page every step of the way. So if you're thinking about getting into a blended family, talk about all these things. Know how you're going to parent together and how you're going to work all these things out. Because if you don't, you are opening yourself up for a whole lot of problems that you don't actually have to have. But we didn't know that when we got married because we didn't have YouTube. So count yourself lucky. But anyways, anything else?
No.
All right. So with that, we thank you so much for being here today. We thank you for coming along with us. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below. Be nice though. Good grief. We're people on the internet. So you don't have to agree with 100% that we have, but we really hope that we've imparted some sort of wisdom that you can use today. And with that, we will see you again in the next one. Bye.